Well, hello everyone. Welcome back. It's nice to see you all again. Welcome to session number 4 of FileMaker Group Therapy for Citizen Developers. Today we're going to be looking at calculations and custom functions. On the agenda for the day, first we're going to employ some simple functions at the field level, including things like the trim function, TextFormatRemove, and then we're going to, and a few others, and then we're going to learn how to pull them out into custom functions. And the reason we're going to do that is because we want to get the most out of the least amount of code, get the most use out of the least amount of coding. And when you pull functions out into your own custom functions, it allows you to apply them in multiple contexts, like apply them onto multiple fields. And then any improvements that you make to those custom functions later will apply to all instances of where you've applied that custom function. So let's get started. I'm going to jump over here into the FileMaker database that we've been building throughout these sessions, our animal care database. And we've got several text fields that, if we have sloppy typists, might end up having leading or trailing spaces in front of them. For example, somebody who's not cautious and careful about how they type might do that. They certainly might do something like that. I'm exaggerating with 3 spaces, but you get the idea. And likewise with street, city, state, zip code, any text field runs the risk of having a sloppy typist enter data that includes leading and or trailing spaces. And we're going to learn how to use the trim function, a simple little one that will trim off those leading and trailing spaces. We'll also learn some other functions in the process as well. So I'm going to go to Manage Database. And we'll start with that title field, this one right here. And we're going to keep it as a text field, of course, but we're going to just apply some auto enter option to it by clicking options and going into calculated value. The auto enter features allow you to make an entry into a field automatically, either when the record is first created or when the value in that field or any referenced field in your calculation changes. So let's make it a calculated value. And I'll use that trim function. I know it by heart, so I won't have to go over here and hunt for it. The trim function simply asks us, what text are you trying to trim? What text are you trying to remove the leading and trailing spaces from? I'm trying to trim the title field, but since I know I want to take this same logic and copy and paste it onto other fields, instead of referring to the title field here, we can use another wonderful little function called the self function. The self function simply returns the contents of the object in which the calculation is defined. In other words, self is a way to say me, the value of whatever I am right now, right? And so when we're in the title field defining a calculation, self is going to refer to title. Likewise, as I highlight this text and copy it, self will refer to something else when I apply it elsewhere, like onto the street field. Double clicking on street, paste in that formula. Now self is going to refer to the street field. So self is a really convenient function. We could certainly live without it, but once we've learned how to use it, you don't ever want to live without it. And you'll notice that I'm turning off the do not replace option here because we want these auto enter calculations to run every time the value in this field is changed, as opposed to only if it's blank to start with. And I'll do the same thing for the city field, making it an auto enter calc as well, pasting in that same calculation. I'm not going to go through and apply the same logic to all of them, but you get the idea. Okay, so now that's an example of applying the calculation logic onto multiple fields, all individually, independently. But let's say that you 3 months later come up with a brilliant idea of not only wanting to be able to trim the leading and trailing spaces away, but also to be able to remove formatting, take away font sizes and colors and bolds and italics and that sort of thing. Then you'd have to go through and hit every one of those fields again and rewrite the same logic, right? Adding the new text formatting remove logic to it. Instead, we're going to try to get the most out of the least amount of code writing by lifting the calculation up and out into a custom function and then applying that custom function at the field level. Then, as we come up with those brilliant new ideas, we can simply redefine the custom function, and the improvements will trickle down into every time that we've used, or every instance where we've used the custom function. So I'll say OK here. I'll go in and show you what will happen if I were to, come in here and change something about this. Let's say we change this an ampersand sign there, and as I click away from the field or move on, you can see that the leading and trailing spaces were eliminated. Same thing, I think I put some spaces in front of this one. Let's see. No. Okay, so the trimming is working, but it's not ideal. We'll get more use out of this same code if we put it into a custom function. File, Manage Custom Functions. You all have access to the Custom Functions command once you've upgraded to FileMaker 17 or above, because it used to be only available in the FileMaker Pro Advanced. FileMaker Pro Basic doesn't allow you to write your own custom functions. And prior to version 17, you had the opportunity to buy buy either the basic version of FileMaker Pro or the advanced version. But once you've upgraded to 17 or above, everybody has advanced, and therefore everyone has access to write their own custom functions. I'll click New, make a new custom function, and I'm going to call this one Scrub Text, right? Function names can include spaces, but I prefer not to use spaces in my function names. And then you can create one or more function parameters to be used by this custom function in the same way that the built-in functions use parameters. So we need this scrub text function to be handed in or to receive some piece of text that's to be scrubbed. So I'm just going to call the parameter text and hit the plus sign. Then down in here is where we write the logic of the formula. In the custom function dialog box, I guess FileMaker assumes that we are big boys and girls because we don't get the help, the wonderful help of autocomplete when we're writing our formula here. So if you need the assistance of the prompt asking you, what parameters any given function uses, find the function in the list here. It's fastest rather than scrolling just to click in the list and then type the first few letters of it there. So trim text, I'll get rid of the bit that I started typing. And so it reminds us that the trim function simply needs to know what text are you trying to trim. Well, it's no coincidence that I chose to call my scrub text parameter text. That way, this word text is actually now going to be a perfect reference to this parameter text, meaning whatever text is sent into the scrub text function will likewise be sent into the trim function, and it'll be trimmed. Now, I'll say OK, unless there are any questions or comments. Jeff says he doesn't have custom functions in the managed list. All right, that's probably because you might have an older version and you don't have the advanced version of that older version, right? Annie asks, is there a way to apply this approach to conditional formatting? I often need to make adjustments, text color change, for example, which means I need to update each one individually. Well, there's a case function, Annie, in the list of functions, and so you could use that case function to check your condition, right? Also an if function, but most of us use case instead. Jeff responded saying he's in FileMaker 19, good, but Jeff, you may not have enabled your advanced tools. If the custom function command isn't there under File, Manage Custom Functions, then you may need to go to the Preferences command and enable your advanced tools. Let me do that really quickly. I'll go ahead and say OK here, and OK again. And on the Mac version of FileMaker, you go to the FileMaker Pro menu and down to Preferences. On the Windows version of FileMaker, you go to the Edit menu, and down here near the bottom or at the bottom is where you'd see the Preferences command there. All right, so Jeff says, yep, forgot about that. It's an easy one to forget. When you do upgrade to FileMaker 17 or above, everybody, make sure that the first thing that you do once you install the software is go right into the Preferences dialog box and turn on this Use Advanced Tools checkbox. It will tell you that you have to restart FileMaker for the changes to take effect, but you don't have to reboot your whole computer. Just quit out of FileMaker and then relaunch FileMaker, and the advanced tools will be there the next time, and then they'll stay there forever. You never have to do that again until you upgrade to the next version of FileMaker, and it comes initially with the Use Advanced Tools setting disabled. So now that I've created a custom function, I'm going to go back into Manage Fields, or Manage Database, excuse me, and work with some of those fields that I had originally applied the auto enter calculation to. This time, changing the calculation to, instead of the trim function manually, I'm going to use that scrub text function. Now you might think, well, since it's a custom function, do we get the autocomplete helps? Yeah, watch, as I type SCR, look at that, there's the scrub text function, which is a custom function. So it shows up just like any legitimate member of the function family. It also appears here in the list in this new category called custom. There. Okay. And again, I'll use self to say I want to scrub whatever text is passed into that, or whatever text is in the city field, I should say. And I'll highlight all that and copy it. And okay, and we'll find the other fields that we applied this to. Let's see, I did it to street. And we'll paste over that one. And so in using this custom function now, what you're doing by applying it across these multiple fields that need this work done, you're making it so that you can do less coding later on as you come up with new and improved ideas about how to, in this case, scrub your text or whatever the context may be. All right, so those are the three fields that I had applied the trimming to originally manually. Now we've got the scrub text function doing the trimming, and we'll check and see if that's still working. Let me throw a couple of spaces in front of Long Beach and move away from the field, and the spaces are eliminated. Fantastic. So now let's say it's, several weeks or months later. There's another question. Lynn asks, could you have inserted self versus text? I'm not sure I know what you mean. Could you have inserted self versus text? You couldn't have left it saying text in the custom function. Oh, no, the self function is not available to use in certain contexts, and a custom function is one of those contexts where the self function is disallowed. Likewise, the replace field contents command, this one here, is very useful for making changes across a range of records in a particular field. You can't use self there either. Yeah, good question, Lynn. Self is not allowed in some contexts, and the custom function is one of them. And it makes sense because the custom function is kind of abstracted out from any particular setting. All right, so now we come up with some great ideas saying, well, I'm tired of my users typing or copying and pasting text in that has formatting applied to it, right? I'm getting bolds, I'm getting italics, and it's really getting annoying because then the text all looks different. As you apply local formatting like that to the data, it's not consistent from record to record, and you wonder, why do I have all this inconsistent looking data in my fields? Well, there's a scrub, or there's a text format remove function that can scrub away, that can strip away text formatting. And all we have to do is now go to our custom function and redefine that to include that additional bit of scrubbing of logic. And then any of these fields to which I had applied the scrub text function as an auto enter calc will instantly not only remove their leading and trailing spaces, but also get rid of their formatting. File, Manage, Custom Functions. We'll edit the scrub text function. And I'm just going to wrap it up inside the text format remove function. TextFormatRemove is one of a family of functions that have to do with formatting text. Sorry, I went too far. Right, there's text color to add color, there's text color remove, there's text font to add font formatting, text font remove, but text format remove, as well as there are a couple of others, text format remove is really the granddaddy of all of them. If you want to strip away font face, font size, font style, which is bold, italic, underline, and all of that, and font color in one universal function. So text format remove, I'm going to double click on it. It inserts itself where the cursor was, and then I'm just going to cut and paste this part and put it here, saying once you've trimmed the leading and trailing spaces off of the text, then go ahead and remove the formatting from that trimmed text. Okay? That's how you create the effect of multiple functions acting on the same data, on the same result. You have to nest them. It's not and or ampersand or anything like that. We'll say OK there and OK there. And now as I come in, let's say I make a change, even just a subtle little change like typing that parenthesis again and move away from the field, you can see that it stripped away the formatting. Likewise, I'll come in and delete the H, type the H again, hit the tab key. The formatting as well as the leading and trailing spaces are all being scrubbed away by that custom function. So again, the goal of getting the most amount of work and effect done with the least amount of code, custom functions really play into that well. Any questions on that so far? Well, that override conditional formatting. We're actually not applying formatting so much to the fields or to the data there. So, and since conditional formatting is applied on the layout object, the conditional formatting, I think, would still take effect. Right? If we applied some conditional formatting, let's say to this city field here, boy, conditional formatting seems to be the hot topic of the day. Let's say I go value is equal to Long Beach. That should be in quotes, I know, but it'll probably figure it out. Then we'll make the text color bright red. Okay, so there's my conditional formatting, and I'll exit out, save the changes. Okay, so Long Beach is there. Obviously not Rossmore. Now let's see if I come in here and add some italics, something that's not dealt with in the conditional formatting rule, like so. So oh, good, of course, the text format remove function did its work to remove the italics, but the conditional formatting being applied at the object level, not on the actual characters, the conditional formatting still applies. I think that's what you all were getting at. Is that right? All right, I'm going to take that as a yes. So conditional formatting still applies. Your text format remove function will not scrub it away. Yes, Lynn's saying great question to whomever, to Phil who asked that question. Excellent. More in regards to text size to fit the field. Yes, there's no way that we can have FileMaker adjust the size of the text to fit the frame in which it's sitting, the frame in the box, at least not that I know of. So if there is a way, I'll have to do some research and find that out and teach it in another session. All right, here's another great use for a custom function. How many phone number fields do we all have in our databases, right? We've got a phone field here for the household phone number. In other words, there's a phone field in the household table. There's one in the customer table right here. There's one for our vendors. We keep our vendors' phone numbers. There's also one for our veterinarians, our doctors, right? And if you want to apply consistent phone number formatting across the board, a custom function is just the perfect tool to use there. So let's go ahead and create a custom function that will format our phone numbers. I'm going to go File, Manage Custom Functions. I'll click the New button to make a new custom function. And I'll call it Format Phone. For the parameter, I'll just say pass in the phone number that needs to be formatted. Clicking the plus sign adds that as a parameter, and that's the only parameter that this function will need. And then down in here, we'll write our custom function logic. That's going to be a little bit long, so I'm going to increase the height on this. Another function that you all need to be very familiar with is the let function. The let function allows you to take what could be a really long and convoluted function and break it up into bite-sized pieces by allowing you to create what are called function variables. You can say, let there exist a variable called whatever, x, and set it to be equal to that. Likewise, let there exist a variable called y and set it to be equal to this. And let there exist a variable called z, and you can have as many of them as you want to kind of take the hard logic of the calculation and break it up into smaller pieces. Then at the very end, after you've declared all those variables, you can say, okay, now the real logic of this formula is simple. It's x plus y minus z. And you can literally refer to the variables in the calculation statement, and it makes doing your work so much easier in terms of writing complex calculations. Let me find the let function, and I'll double click on it. It comes in looking a bit frightful, but if you just do a little bit of cleanup work, it can look a lot better. Curly braces are always used to surround things that are optional in a calculation function. So I'm going to get rid of the curly braces. The square brackets here are used to surround the bits that are to surround the portion of the calculation that is the variable declaration section. As you can see, I'm moving things onto their own separate lines to make it easier, to see where the square bracket business ends, where that section ends, using just spaces to indent because we can't use the tab key. If you like using tabs, then Option tab works on the Mac, or Control tab on the Windows side. And we'll do something like that. We'll come over here. There. See, now at a glance, you can see that my left parenthesis and my right parenthesis, that I have balanced parentheses just by looking straight down the line. Likewise, I can see that I've got this opening square bracket here and its corresponding closing square bracket here. If they're buried amongst other code on the same lines, it doesn't make it nearly as easy to see. Okay, so taking the phone number and formatting it, let's say that we want it to look like this. We want our phone numbers to eventually look like this: 562-555-1234. Regardless of how somebody types them in, that's how we want them to end up looking. Okay. But we also want to make sure that there's no leading and trailing spaces. We want to make sure there's no formatting, no bold or italic or anything funky like that. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to run whatever phone number was passed into this function through our scrub text function. If you're wondering, wait a minute, you can call a custom function from inside another custom function? Sure, scrub text is as valid a function as any of these others. In fact, it even appears here in the list, I think. There it is, right? So we'll create a variable, we'll define a variable, instead of its name variable 1, we'll call it scrubbed phone. Variable names cannot use spaces, nor can they use any funky characters. So keep them real plain and simple. We'll call it scrubbed phone, and we'll say, set that equal to what we get when we run the phone parameter. There, I just double clicked on phone to put it in place of the name text. When we run the phone value through our scrub text function, that'll get rid of the leading and trailing spaces and the text formatting. Then the next thing we'll do is we'll eliminate anything but digits from what the user typed. If they typed it in like this, right? We don't want those left and right parentheses, so we're going to strip them away. And the way that you can strip away characters is using the filter function. the filter function, and we'll call this one filtered phone. The filter function needs two parameters. The first one is what are we trying to filter? And the second parameter is what text do we want to keep and let everything else wash away? Well, what we're trying to filter, what we're trying to pour through the spaghetti strainer, for any of you who have taken our classes and know my spaghetti strainer analogy for this filter function, we want to pour through the scrubbed phone number, or pour in the scrubbed phone number, and we want to run it through a filter that only keeps, and this has to be enclosed in quotation marks, so I'm going to type the quotes, that only keeps digits. And I'm literally just typing the digits, all 10 digits on the keyboard. That will result in only the digits of the phone number that they entered. It'll eliminate any dashes, any parentheses, any alphabetic characters, and so forth. Now we know, after we've run through those two processes, that the value in that filtered phone variable is going to have no leading and trailing spaces, no formatting, and nothing but digits in it. Now we'll start to kind of slice and dice it up. We'll say, let's create, let there exist a variable called area code that's equal to what we get when we extract just the left 3 characters off of that phone number, off of that filtered phone value. So I'm going to copy that. We'll say, look at the filtered phone value and grab the leftmost 3 characters. Now, some of you are already thinking ahead, saying, well, okay, what if they didn't include the area code? Or what if they typed more than 10 digits that make up a valid US phone number? What if it's an international phone number? For now, set all those questions aside. Let's not get ourselves into those weeds for right now. I'm more interested in just the custom function business here and how we're able to extract out logic into a custom function. Of course, you can accommodate all that stuff with more sophisticated formula writing. Okay, so we've got the area code is just the leftmost 3 characters of our filtered phone number. Then I'll call it the prefix. We'll call that the next 3 characters. That's this part of the phone number here. I don't know if that's the official name, but that's what we're going to use. We'll say that prefix is going to be equal to what you get when you take some characters out of the middle of that filtered phone number. Right, and I think I've got filtered phone there. Starting at the 4th character position and grabbing the next 3 characters. Isn't that right? If we've got it stripped down to just that much like that, 10 digits, then the area code was these 3. Then the prefix would be starting at character position number 4. That's why the 4 is here. Starting at the 4th character, grabbing 3 characters. And then lastly, the suffix, the last 4 digits, will be what you get when you grab the rightmost 4 characters out of that filtered phone number. There. Now you don't, on your last variable declaration, on your very last variable within the square bracketed section, you don't put a semicolon, because this semicolon here meets that need. Okay, so this semicolon here suffices for the last one. You'd get an error if you tried to put a semicolon out here at the end of this line. So now that we've defined these 5 variables to do the work, even referring to previously defined variables in some of the newer variables themselves, now we can come down to the calculation section and say, our phone numbers need to look like this. We want the area code. By the way, be careful when you type variable names because there's no autocomplete for them anywhere. And then we want a dash, and then we want the prefix, and then we want a dash. I'm enclosing the dashes in quotes because literal characters all have to be, whoops, sorry, I forgot my ampersand. Literal characters always have to be enclosed in quotes if you want them to make their way into the end result of the formula. So area code, the first 3, dash, prefix, the middle 3, dash, and suffix, the rightmost 4. I think this will work. Any questions on this logic? Okay, fantastic. I'll say okay here and okay again. And now I'll go into all of those phone fields in the Manage Database dialog box. And one by one, we'll say, hey, phone number here. When they enter a phone number, I want to auto enter the result of the calculation, format phone, passing in. And again, we'll use that lovely self function because of the context we're in. We're defining this in the very field that we want to have run through the format phone function. Then I'll copy that, of course, so that it can easily paste it in to any of the other phone number fields. Let's see, vendor had a phone field. Paste that. Turn off do not replace. And household had a phone field. And customer has a phone field. So yes, you still have to write the formulas on the fields themselves, but you're writing a formula that really represents a whole body of logic that's abstracted or pulled out from the context of any one field so that you can make changes to it later as you change your mind or make improvements or come up with brilliant new ideas. Let's say I take that 7 off and type it again and hit the tab key, and you can see the phone number is formatted automatically. Likewise, here in household, let's say I type our phone number, and we can just type it as digits. And as soon as I hit the tab key or move away, there we go. If I'd put leading or trailing spaces in there, of course, those would be scrubbed. If I'd formatted any of it to look strange, like bolding, that's all going to be removed as well. And there we go. So you can use custom functions to try to get more work done with less code. And I hope this will make custom functions a little less daunting, perhaps, and something that you'll work into your workflow on a real regular basis.